All right, for a second, imagine I just threw you into a game, didn't explain the rules, the objective, how many players there are, and I just blew a whistle. I said, go. People are moving around, things are happening. You'd probably feel overwhelmed, and your chances of success in any capacity are probably extremely low, right? But if we're being honest, that's what life feels like at times. You were just thrown into a game that was going on before you. You know it's going to go on after you. And you have a lot of expectations of the world around you. The world has expectations of you, but you ain't find no overall user manual. If you can relate to that, you probably have a lot of the pains and frustrations of being in a game where you just don't know the rules, how things work. Now, I think it could be a stretch to say I'm going to give you the user manual for life, but I would be surprised if you're not familiar with infinite and finite games. I'd be surprised that if after this video you didn't feel a lot more grounded and have a better understanding of the world around you and inside of you and why things happen the way that they do. So let's jump right into it. The conversation here is infinite versus finite games. If you are new to this channel, I usually just skip across any kind of intros because I feel like the majority of people watching this will have an idea of who I am. But not that I'm famous. I'm just saying I be making niche content for men. And I've been coaching men for over a decade. And so I've just been in the trenches. I've seen a lot of things, had to figure a lot of things out for my own self and with clients, and I'm just here to bring you guys strategies that I have seen work for people. No theory, no philosophies, things you can see and understand very simply and then apply to your life. And this understanding of infinite and finite games is, man, it's stuff I think should have been taught in school. But if you are someone that aspires to do things at a high level and get the most out of life, this is one of the foundational things you should understand. And this is a topic I'll probably link back to or refer to in a lot of other videos. So that's why I'm trying to knock it out here. Okay, that being said, there are two types of games in life. You have infinite games and then you have finite games. Let's start with the finite because that's going to be more familiar to us. So this is a game that has set rules. Okay, this is something that has a set amount of players. Okay, there are, so the goal here is to win. And these are most of the games that you can think of and that you grew up playing. So think of a sport. You have a winner, you have a loser, you have football, American football, where you have 11 people on each side of the field, right? And anytime you violate those rules, there's a penalty. Okay, and you are violating the game. And so, like, something that's really big about a finite game is boundaries. Okay, because if you don't follow those boundaries, like, the game falls apart. So imagine we're playing football and I catch a pass and I run out of bounds to get away from you, but I just keep running all the way out, out of bounds, and I finally get to the end zone. It's like, no, that doesn't work. Like, you gotta play along. You gotta stay in the rules. You have to conform or they don't work. And now, please don't hear me saying that this is bad or anything's wrong with this. You just need to understand what type of game you're playing when we're talking about a finite game. Now, the infinite game is the opposite of that. Okay, so while you see everything here is like set, there's a clear goal, there's boundaries and rules. There are no rules in an infinite game. Okay, there can be that is really ugly. That's supposed to be like an infinity sign. Okay, there could be an infinite amount of players. We don't know. All right, the goal is not to win in an infinite game. Actually, because it's impossible to win in an infinite game. The goal is to play, is to keep playing. All right, and while there are boundaries in an infinite game, the goal is to play with those boundaries, not to play within them. You want to poke at the boundaries, find the outer limits, because an infinite game is about expanding, about growing. And I hope I touched on this. I'll be moving fast. The struggle within us at times is that we are beings that are made of both the finite and the infinite. This is where I didn't finish this point. I got distracted when I was saying I don't like to have a lot of theories and philosophies and things you have to believe in. But I do think this is something you can observe. But I was going to say, if you're a Christian in Genesis, this is what we see in the Genesis creation story. So many people as Westerners, we have the wrong view. We think that's like security footage of God creating the earth. And that's not what the authors had in mind. Not even close. It's trying to give you something way deeper and way more impactful and important. But you see God create the animals from the earth, and same with man, right? Man is from the earth. But there's something a little bit different between him and the animal, and that's that God breathes in him. And so that's what animates and brings this man to life. And so you have this dual nature of this infinite being inside of this finite being. And you can almost see how that there's a tension in that. And that's why it's important to understand this, not just in a practical level, because I'm going to get into some examples of what infinite games are. Spoiler alert, life as a whole, and how I'm about to explain it, is an infinite game. But that doesn't mean that finite is bad. It just means there's two different sides, and we have an infinite game that's always going, but there can be finite games that are played on top of that. And the biggest misconception that I've found that we have as men is that there's this undeniable desire in you for more. But that can trap you, especially when you think that more is to be manifested in the outer world, in the finite world, which is going to end, right? Whether it's in your death, the earth exploding. Again, if you're more of a Christian perspective, there's going to be a new heaven, new earth. The goal isn't to just win in the physical realm. I like to use the analogy of a board game, because when we all die, it's like all the pieces going back into the box. And anything that is physical has that finite aspect to it. Obviously, our bodies as finite beings, they're from the ground, right? They go back to the ground. Things like jobs or something, right, might come to an end. Again, anything that's physical in nature. But you also have this infinite nature in you, and it is screaming for more. But we think that means more money, more hoes, more status, more followers. And so we try to broadcast it outwardly, that desire for, and if you notice, it can never be satisfied. That's why no matter how full you get, you're still going to be hungry eventually. That's why no matter how much sex you have, eventually you're still going to be horny again. And this idea in the physical realm of like filling up, it's impossible. And that desire is meant to be pointed inwardly. That's the only place there's the true fulfillment. That's a little bit beyond the scope of this video. Definitely check out the video I did on the inner and outer worlds, the two worlds. But I wanted to make this point and kind of park here because I don't want to gloss over that. There's a very surface level understanding of this, but it's all pointing to that. At the ultimate nature is that you are an infinite being in a finite experience, very much like you playing a video game, right? You play Fortnite, very, very finite and very small compared to you as a being outside of that. And if you were to only view that experience from within Fortnite without any of your broader infinite perspectives, it would be dull, it would be dry. And if you really understand it, like you only play Fortnite for how it makes you feel outside of the game, right? You have no thought, emotions in your Fortnite character. It's you outside of the game playing it as that infinite being. And that's what life is as a whole. Like you have a body that was born and that will die, but you aren't your body. You, on a deeper level, as an infinite divine being, have a bigger game that you're playing. So some examples of infinite games. You have your faith, all right? Your relationship, spirituality, your relationship with God, whatever you want to call it. There's no end goal, okay? There's no winning in it. You don't read the Bible, meditate for 30 hours, and then like confetti falls and credits roll, and it's like, yo, you beat Christianity. Yeah, let's go. No, it's an infinite game. It's meant to continue to be played. Moving into like your relationships, all right? There's no winning. But if you notice, when you bring these finite strategies into infinite games, there's turmoil. You know, if you're competing with a spouse, competing with your friends, these aren't things that you're supposed to win in. There's no competition in the infinite game. But in finite games, you need competition. Like, please don't sign up to be on my team in a finite game and you're not trying to win. I need you to. But I also need you to understand that there's an infinite game that we're playing this finite game in. So in the event that we lose, it doesn't define us. All right? No one's even going to care in a few years or decades and after we die. But even in the now, like, there's an infinite game that's bigger than that. But yeah, finite games, you need to win. You need to care. You need to compete. Because someone can lose, someone can win. I want to be the winner. But in the infinite game, there is no winner. And so in your relationships, there's no competing. The point is to play. Same with your health. All right? You're not trying to eat a certain amount of Brussels sprouts and then dun-dun-dun-dun, you've won, right? The point is to keep playing, to stay healthy. Same with your finances, or if you're an entrepreneur in business. We can think of so many businesses that were on top at one point. And where are they now? They could be out of business. A big example for me growing up is just Blockbuster, right? That was the thing. There was almost one on every other corner. Now they're gone, all right? Because the point isn't to just be number one or to be winning. It's to stay in the game. There may be ebbs and flows, but again, even with your personal finances, there's no end goal. And the more you bring that finite to it, you create friction, you create turbulence, you create struggle and suffering because the strategy is incompatible. Because you're going to be looking for a win that isn't there. You're going to be following rules that don't need to be there, okay, in an infinite game. And so the big takeaway is for you to notice that and to grow this awareness of when you're playing a finite game, but also not getting lost into it to the point that you're violating an infinite game. What is an example of that? A great one from my life is we used to have game night, like a little board game night with church friends. Man, y'all, this was a while back. This is when we first got into the church. And so imagine just making church friends. And this was a much more competitive version of me. I did not understand this back then. And so for me, I was a very win by any means necessary guy. I was competing with everyone. I would have people that would eat lunch with me. They'd be mad because we'd just be chilling, eating. I'd slam my cup down. I'd be like, boom, I'm done. I beat y'all. They're like, bro, we didn't even know we were racing. We were enjoying a meal. That's an infinite game, right? We're not trying to compete with you here. But I would go to these board games, y'all. I'm saying we're all church folk here. And so we'd play Monopoly. I'd be making side deals. I'd be having husbands partner with me and like, kind of like leaving his wife out the deal and like people getting mad. I'm saying everything I can saying and doing everything I can to win. And let's say something is like Monopoly. And so the game night would end. I would be victorious. I'd have all the cash. I'd be like, yes. And then we would take all that money, all those properties I had, and we would just put them back in the box. But everyone's feelings towards me didn't go back in the box too. They didn't want to hang out with me no more. The husbands that were like on my side, we were laughing, we were dancing, pointing at their wife and all this. The next time after they went home and had to deal with their wife, they wasn't trying to do that no more. And I realized I was winning these finite games, but I was ruining the infinite game. And I noticed I was spending way more time in the infinite world, or all of my time, than I was in the finite game. And so that doesn't mean that I had to stop competing at the board games. I just had to realize where they fell in life. And I would still try hard, but I would have an understanding, okay? And I realized that I was only playing those board games to feel a certain way. And when I needed it to all come from the board game, it was a very controlling, manipulative experience that still didn't even get me the happiness I was looking for. But when I learned to show up full within myself and just bring happiness to the board game, the outcome wasn't as needed for me. I could still play very, very hard to win, but I was okay when I didn't win. And that's the difference between playing a game already from success and from a high level of identity versus needing the game for success and identity and to matter and all of that. And so as you move through faith, your relationships, your mental, physical health, your finances, these are things I want you to realize they're infinite games, and try to pinpoint the finite strategies that you're moving with when you're trying to just get to this point and then everything will be okay. A lot of us do this with our happiness. Think of all the things you said will make you happy. The girl, the job, the kids, whatever it may be. You've got those things in the past, but they still didn't solve your happiness problem, right? Because you're bringing a finite approach to an infinite game. Think of all the people when you say things like, oh, I love this person, but they did me dirty like that. That's not, first off, that's not love. And what it's trying to, because love is an infinite thing. You don't love because of what someone else does. That's manipulation. That's a finite approach. Love is infinite. Love is from who you are. Okay, love is a fruit of the spirit. And so that's just something that doesn't run dry. You don't do it to get a certain reaction. You do it because of who you are. And so you could care less. That's Jesus on the cross, right? That's what love is. And so when you can understand that you're bringing finite strategies to an infinite game, you kind of realize why you have some of the mental suffering, some of the frustration, why things aren't going, why even as you control and manipulate things in the outer world, why you don't feel better on the inner world when you start to understand this. And probably one of the biggest things for me is right here, playing. Man, when you live a finite life and you have a finite view of purpose, I might need to do a whole new different video on purpose. But like when you have a finite view to that, you need things to go a certain way. And you're not really worried about your day-to-day fun in playing, because play is from a place of just enjoying the process. Right? Play is when you are in the game having fun, but finite games can take the play out of some of the things that are supposed to be the most fun, because our identity gets wrapped up in the finite game and we stop enjoying the moment, and our day-to-day playfulness can just be sacrificed at the altar of future success, because everything's about this one goal that I got to get to. And then you get there just to realize it didn't do everything you thought it was going to do. And you still got to be in the infinite game. And so if there was one big takeaway that I would have you take from this is to embrace the play in your life. Okay. Create a little bit of distance from the need for outcomes to go your certain way, and notice how when you bring that playful, more fun attitude to things, you don't lack in focus and clarity and getting things done. Ironically, when you're having fun and just playing, you're very focused, right? Put your favorite game on. It's almost impossible to get distracted. Not to say that distractions won't pop up. You'll just handle them really quickly. So for me, I might be locked in on a game. My son's like, oh, I'm hungry. Cool, distraction. I'm so having so much fun. I'll do exactly what I need to do to get him fed and then get right back to what I need to do. Okay. But reverse that when you're trying to be at work and there's no fun, no playful attitude towards it. Man, everything's a distraction. You know what I mean? And so there's so many things that we try to work on in terms of focus and concentration and productivity skills, that if we would just bring more fun and playfulness, we do that on its own. Think of how effective you are in the things that you're playful in and that you have fun with. And so that would be my number one takeaway. If I was to make it a bit more practical, to give you guys some homework, I'm going to give you what I like to call for my clients is an audit. All right. And this is an infinite audit where I want you to go throughout your day and almost like you were an auditor, like you were a third party having to score yourself. All right. That's the level of awareness I want you to have in your life. So like, let's say you're going to have to audit your day and you're getting paid $1 million to just be aware of all the things that are happening. For $1 million, you're taking all types of notes. You're looking at this from different angles. That's the energy for this audit. Okay. And it's an infinite audit. Infinite/finite, Infinite. So, hey, the spelling is hard at times. Now, through this infinite audit, all right, I want you to go through what I call the creator frame. This is your faith, relationships, energy, and economics. This is an acronym. Faith is self-explanatory. Relationships is your relationship with the people around you. Your energy is your mental and physical health. And then your economics is all things financial. I want you to go throughout your day and notice how you transition through those different dimensions in your day. And notice where you're bringing finite strategies to them, where you feel like your connection with God depends on this Bible verse you got to read for that day. That's finite living. So many men are trying to be good Christians by reading the Bible and go to church. Please don't hear that that's a bad start. It's just that you ever need to stop going to church. I'm not trying to demonize going to church, reading the Bible at all. What I am saying is bad when that is what you think is spirituality. Sitting your butt in a church and listening to a sermon and just reading a Bible as like things to check off your list is not spirituality. Those are tools. Those are a means to win. They're trying to get you somewhere, to a place internally. But so many of us wrap our identity around that. That's finite living. Moving to relationships. Again, are you competing with people? Are you trying to get things from people transactionally? Go watch our last video, or it may be the last video, I don't know. But the video I did on Two Worlds, just where we talk about trying to be full within yourself. That'll help a bit. But this idea that if you need someone else to do or be a certain way for you to be okay, that's finite living. Like if you're trying to win and get over on people and you win, they lose, finite living. Moving to your energy, again, mental, physical health. Do you think that your health is your routines? Please don't think routines and habits are bad. Again, those are a means to an end. You can have unhealthy attachments to your routines, to your dieting, to where you're not being aware and seeing how things are even affecting your body. You're just doing another fad diet to try to get down to a certain weight for a reunion, instead of just trying to live from an infinite place of just being healthy. Okay, trying to get to your dream body to impress people, that's vanity. Please don't hear me saying these are as right and wrong from like a moral standpoint. It's more just from a living your life and knowing what you're doing perspective. You'll always be a slave to that if you need to look a certain way to be okay. But if you can just be healthy, try to live as healthy as you can from the inside out, I'm sure you'll probably hit an amazing physique and body and all that stuff, but it's just for the right reasons, okay? Infinite versus finite living. And then economics, same thing there. Are you trying to win? Are you trying to get to a certain place? A lot of issues here are in career goals. Like, do I need to get here to be happy, to matter? Once I get here, I have purpose. The big red flag is if you think purpose is all in that career thing. You talk to most men, they talk about purpose. Well, what does God have for me as a purpose? They're talking about their career. Like they need to know what job, as if God created them and only cared about the kind of job they have, the kind of car they have, these things of that nature. And it's like, again, a very spiritually immature perspective on purpose. If we look at purpose as the reason for something being created, so much more to you and your experience as we talk about these other dimensions than just this last one. And so as you're going through this infinite audit, notice as you go through the different areas of the creator frame and notice the finite strategies within what you're doing. Not to sit there and demonize it and try to aggressively stop doing it, but just in noticing it, a lot of the chains and the control starts to dissolve. And that's the biggest power, okay? So that was your homework. Again, if you've seen some of the other videos, this would be my secondary approach that I would recommend for you. The number one approach is the creator game, and that is down below in the description. There is an upgraded fee you can pay, but you can get started for free, so there's no excuse. It's just as free as this. This will just give you a starting space. So many men like to skip steps and do things out of order, and they wonder why they're inconsistent. They're just violating a fundamental law of growth. Think of anything you know, from businesses to your kids, if you have those, to your toenails, your bad habits. Things start at a base and they grow. Anytime you try to skip fundamental steps, there's a collapse. There's a falling. Think of a building, anything like that. And so I always recommend that men build in order. That's not cool. That's not sexy. That's not popular these days. But if you want my honest answer on how to improve your life, if you resonated with any of this video, please start with the link in the description. And then let me know if you have any feedback, any questions that popped up from me sharing this. Maybe there's follow-up videos I can make on it, or you have something completely unrelated that you need help on if it's in my realm, which is these dimensions. This is the coaching we do. I would love to shine some light on it. So leave all that down below. I love you guys, and until next time, God first, God bless.